softball program. Congratulations. You did that all by yourself? Wow.
Hi. My name's Lynn Downey. I just want to say on behalf of Coach Lil Liberty and myself, thank you for taking the time to honor girls tonight. It's greatly appreciated, and we are very proud of our team. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand this to you to make sure that it gets to the place. And the boys volleyball team, many members of the boys volleyball team here this evening. How you guys doing? Good. Anybody want to take the mic and talk a little bit about the season? I saw your video, so I know you're more than willing to talk about it. I know it was a very inspirational season. Okay, thanks.
All right, so this year the boys volleyball team was one game shy of a perfect season. We had our coach Fitz, who was diagnosed with cancer for the second time, and she was battling it for the entire year. But she still held us together, and even in the championship, when we went down 2-0, we ended up coming back and winning the next 3 to take the championship. And we were happy to give the championship to our coach.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. If you haven't seen the news video that has been done, I'm not sure what channel it was. One of the local 6 and 10, a couple of local networks. You can probably just go on the internet on YouTube and find it. It's out there. It's very inspirational. The interviews with the boys and with Coach Fitz about dedicating the season to her.
The Rhode Island Department of Education revised the accountability system. Prior to that, I don't know if you remember back before 2012, at that time, before the revision, at that time the accountability was based mostly on proficiency. And then this new system was developed, and there were some major changes. First of all, there was some consolidation of the subgroups so that you had For example, the students who had individual education plans, as well as students who had English language programs, were combined together to increase the cells in the schools, so that they would be a larger group and they could be counted. They also combined the free and reduced lunch. So we had some bigger numbers, and they also reduced the size. I believe the end size before was around 40, and they reduced that to 20. So if you have anything below a 20, it doesn't count towards your accountability. You get a full score for that. And then this system uses multiple measures of student performance. And these are the multiple measures of student performance. You see them on the left. First one is absolute percent proficiency, and so this is how many students have scored a 3 or a 4. And not only is it all the students in the school that's one classification, but also the ethnic groups, the minority groups, the IEP groups, and the ELLs in the school. So you have scores for each of those. The next one is the progress to the 2017 targets. What they do is they take a baseline going back to 2012, and they give a target to 2017, and then they give equal increments for each year. And that's your target. So each school has a different target depending on what their baseline performance was. The next one is based on achievement gaps, and this is comparing a level of students who have performed with distinction and seeing what the gap is for those students that do have IEPs or English language learners, as well as our minority groups. The next one is the percent of students at the distinction level. That would be all students who received a 4 on the state assessment. This is still all based on NECAP scores. And then the next one is measuring growth. At one point last year, I showed you how the calculation is measured from a student from one year to another according to their academic peers, and that's how this is accounted for. So the elementary and middle schools have all of those pieces. That last one for growth, the high school does not have, because we only test in 11th grade at the high school at this point. That is going to change, but that's the way it is now. And then the high school has 2 more measures of accountability. The first one is the graduation rate, and the next one is a scaled score. Since we don't have a growth score, they do compare the students' scaled scores. So it would be the 11th graders from one year to the 11th graders from the next year. So it's not a cohort model, but it's a scaled score comparison for those. And then once all the measures are, the points are added up in each of the categories, then you get an index score, and that index score places you in one of the classifications. So you've probably heard the terms commended, leading, typical, warning, focus, and priority, and we did very well with this. Our lowest classification was typical for all of our schools. And this is how the schools fared. The composite index score is in the middle, and so you'll see what each school, that's when you add up all the points then for all of those various measures. That's the total amount of points, and then that leads to the classification on the right side. So you see Davisville Middle, Fishing Cove, Forest Park are typical. Hamilton and the high school leading, as well as Stony Lane leading. Quinnesset is typical, and Wickford Middle School is commended. They still have the annual measurable objectives, and each subgroup within each school district has its own AMOs. And so this is what I was talking about before. It's the same principle based on the 2010-11 assessments. Each subgroup is required to cut by half the percentage of students who are not proficient by the 2016-17 school year. And so the AMOs are based on equal increments from that baseline. So you can't see this on the screen, but you do have the copy of the PowerPoint in front of you. This is the elementary level, so it's all of our elementary schools and the targets that they were able to achieve. And then we have the middle school, and the high school. Each school also has an individual report card too, and all of that is on the RIDE website. For our next steps, the principals have analyzed the data and in fact had to go through the raw data before these scores and classifications came out. Next thing is that they will see the areas of strengths and areas in need of improvement, and they will base their school improvement goals on that, as well as probably their student learning objectives for the next school year. And then they will plan interventions and supports based on those areas of weakness and improvements. And then through the school year, monitor the progress through formative assessments and through their data teamwork. So looking at their data points and making sure that we are catching kids before too much time goes on through the school year and giving them the supports and interventions they need. And that's it for the classifications.
Are there any questions about the classifications? All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Humbird.
You're welcome.
I know you have the next presentation with Mr. Booth on the new website.
And so just a few things to mention about this. Last March, it was, I believe, March 6th, we had one of our technology committee meetings, and we knew that we were in need of improving the website, and we had some options. We looked at the 4 options that were basically affiliated with the product that we were using, and they were coming out with a new product. It's a company called Edline, and it's combined with Blackboard Engage. And so we went with that product. We looked at some of the other products, Google and Aspen, but the options at the time didn't seem to be as viable for us, so we went with this new product. Following that, we ran some PD for our webmasters in each school, so we had 2 days of PD with the company, and they learned how to use and set up the school sites, along with the IT department, who had their own professional development prior to that. And then following, well, I do want to say when we met with the representative from the company during the committee meeting, she did ask us what some of our priorities were, and we said that we wanted it to be intuitive and easy to upload, because that was one of the, I think, obstacles or roadblocks to our the model that we had, which was outdated. And what you're looking at is our new website. It has a cleaner look to it. It's more like the business standards that you see websites when you look up companies nowadays. And I want to point out some of the features as we go along. One of the things we were looking for is to have some uniformity from school to school, to make sure that if parents have more than one child in the district and they go from one school to another, that the sites would be uniform. They'd be able to recognize where to find where to find things. So what we have going across here is the horizontal bar of the first page of our main page, and that has our administration, our schools, our parents. So those are all links for the parents and information. And then for the students, so that they can log on to their email easily enough. And then under the staff, we have things that are particularly helpful for staff members. And then under community, we have right now 2 sites, and maybe adding more links to that. Up on the top here is a home button, so every time you want to get back to the main page, you just go onto that, and you can select any of these sites that are on our pages. Over here we have what's called the list view, and this gives you not the pictures that you see here, but text, so that you can see everything that's on the page, and that's for every site. We'll do that. And then on the top also, we have a translation button, so that you can see that if you click any one of these, it will translate the whole site or the page that you're on into a different
Excuse me,
language.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt. Could we please have a little bit of decorum up here at the table while they're doing their presentation? Thank you.
And this one is if you want to use social media, you can use, that'd be the next one over here. You can have options for Twitter if you want to post things. There's a nice videos under the help section so that if you need a refresher on something, that you can go to these short videos. They're very succinct and very helpful. I have found them helpful. I've learned a lot through them. And so I'll just bring you to one of the school sites first. I'm going to go down to Stony Lane. And on all of the school sites, we have the logo here for NK, and there's a picture of the school. Once again, this horizontal bar is different from the main one, but all the school sites have the horizontal bar. And then we have videos going on all of the sites. And then can we scroll down? And we have quick links. These are very easy to develop when you're developing the sites. A simple process. Then we have the news section, and we also have a calendar section. And the calendar can either be in text like this, or it can be in a calendar look, regular calendar. And then I'm just going to bring you to one of the administrators' sites. So we'll go back to the home button on the top. This brings us back to the main page, and we're going to go under administration to departments. And I'm going to bring you to my site. This is right there. And I'm just going to hover over on, Rich, I think I'll do this one. Thank you. So on the left side, you'll see things such as the curriculum, and if you hover over it to the right, you'll see the different curriculum that you have approved already. So these are all ones that have gone before you, the ELA, music, science, visual arts, foreign language, etc. And each one of these, as you hover over, will give you useful information. And we're building and building at this point. I have a message over on the right, and then on the left are the links as well. So any one of these is a quick link. For example, this will bring you to the park site. There it is there. This one will bring you to Achieve the Core. And it's there, and you get back to the main site very easily. And then on the right is the calendar. So if you look, anything that's underlined would be something that has an entry in it already. So if you look at this month, and you'll see how that comes across. I don't know if you can read that, but that's our ELA PD that's happening tomorrow, as well as our middle school social studies PD that's going on. And it has the times and locations. If you look at the next one, same thing happens. This is in July. Have our middle school ELA is meeting. So that goes all the way through. On my site, I'm updated till August. And the kickoff for kindergarten is there. I forgot there are news items, too, located right there. When we introduced the site, we introduced it late in the school year, so I just want to make you aware of that. We felt that it was better, even though it was only 2 months before the school year was going to end. We wanted to be sure that people had at least some time to get familiar with it, so that we wouldn't be hit with opening school and trying to open this website at the same time. So there are some links right now that, things that need improvement. We need to build on the sites, but right now we have a foundation to build upon.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. Are there any questions?
I'm the chair and vice chair.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
They stepped off. Tim asked me to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I know sometimes you come to the Ed line or sometimes you come to the old one. Is the old site completely hidden now from from any links to it? In other words, like if I go to the town of North Kingstown, I'm just someone maybe thinking about moving into the town. I go to the town, and they have a link, hopefully, to the school. Does it link to this, or does it link to the old one?
So if you were to Google NK Schools, for example, you'll get this site. It is our public site now.
So some of the functional capabilities, so each teacher could have, or course could have a site. So in theory, like every syllabus can be now posted. That's web-based, that, a parent can go to every course and that their child is in and find their teacher and find, syllabus and other stuff now?
Right. So each teacher has multiple pages if they teach multiple courses. They can choose to put a different material on each one of those, or they can use one page if they would like to and put all of their course material for their various courses on one and manage one page instead of 4. That's their choice as to how they want to do that.
So there's sort of synchronicity with the Blackboard thing in terms of, in Aspen, in terms of, and I remember with the old Blackboard, they talked about this where, a parent at one point with a single login can access everything. Are we moving to that?
We are not going to move to that at this point. We talked about it quite a bit. We talked about it at our last technology meeting, and everybody felt that people had logins to Aspen and were able to access a lot of information through Aspen. So at this point, we are not going to go use a login system. We're going to keep the site public.
Okay, so is there a vision at some point where a parent can log in? Because Aspen is still somewhat reactive in a sense, right? It could be, but I'm envisioning back maybe from a year ago when we had the demonstration of, we get to the point where a parent can log in and find not only their child's current stuff, graded stuff that's thing, but future events and other stuff. Are we going to realize that one day?
Well, we're going to grow in this and see where it brings us. We didn't want to have redundancy and have people be accountable for 2 different logins. So we are improving our functionality with Aspen as well. So at this point, we're going to keep the site public, let everybody work on it, and then see where it leads us. So we know that there's a lot of functionality right now that we are limiting ourselves on, but I do believe that we will grow into some of the functionality. There was also, they had mentioned at the demonstration that you were at, they mentioned about the search button, and Rich and I talked to the company the other day, and they said, indeed, they have a search button, but they're not pleased with the reliability of it and its functionality at this point. So they are still working on it. So we don't have that yet.
Okay, and so for the school committee specifically, we could have a workspace site off of this system? Well, we could log in. I know we have the current way we can log in, but an actual space off of this where we can have a workspace or other stuff functionality?
Well, that was one of the things we were looking for when we engaged with Blackboard Engage. And I particularly was looking for collaborative spaces so that the teachers, too, could work on curriculum and build lesson plans right on the site. And I do believe it has that functionality, but we are not there right now.
Okay, but we have that capability.
They told us we have that capability.
Okay, and then some of the historic, like budget and other sort of financial information, is that accessible currently?
It's under business office, same where it was before, under budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse
Go
me.
ahead, Mr. Mudge.
I guess this is the last site that I looked at on the web. If I'm not if I'm wrong, then please advise me. But I noticed in your headings and so forth and so on that you have listed the school committee as a department. And in another case, you listed it under administration. I think the school committee should have its own top bullet, like it had before. And so that,
You're listed as administration?
Yeah, well-
Not as department?
well,
It's actually under both.
if you go to another area, you'll find it under departments too. But nonetheless, I think the school committee,
It's right there, Mr. Mudge, under administration.
yeah, but it shouldn't be under administration. I'm saying it should be under the school committee. Isn't
Okay.
it,
Well-
isn't it the school committee, portal and things that you want to have underneath there?
Well, there was a lot of decisions that went into how things would be displayed, and everything is supposed to be one click away. And that's what makes the site clean, is that, well, 1 to 2 clicks away. So the idea is not to have so much visually on a page. That's what gives it its clean look. So we had to make some decisions, and we couldn't put everything across this horizontal bar. So we put we put them where we felt they should go.
Well, I kind of looked at Narragansett and Jamestown, not Jamestown, South Kingstown, and they seem to have a very, very nice website that does that, and it separates things functionality as well, as far as I'm concerned. In addition, I find that we should have a portal on there or a site that doesn't just say, RIDE or chart of accounts. We should have something that, for example, under RIDE has our own listing of sites that bring us directly to the North Kingstown information, directly to the budget, directly to the enrollment rates, directly to the, the schedules, and directly to the academic achievements. Like, bingo, so people don't have to keep clicking and clicking and clicking. I know it's a pain because I go through it. So I think it'd be much more helpful for the community and the users to be able to do that.
Okay, so we do have some of those things on the superintendent's site. We have the district enrollment, for example, but for the links, we could definitely bring you to a link. Sometimes on RIDE, the way their website is layered, you can't bring it to the exact school level. You can bring it to the page, because I've tried to do this many a time. You can't bring it down to that other layer, but it'll bring you to the page, and then you still have to do a little bit of hunting there.
I'll check mine, but I thought we could bring it right down to the local, Well, like, for example, if I want to go to uniform chart of accounts for North Kingston, I just put up that website number. I copy the number, put it to one side. Every time I click that, I go to that site. It has a North Kingstown.
That very well may be, but a lot of the sites that provide website are dynamically created, so it's next to impossible.
Yeah, well, okay. Also, with respect to contracts and, for example, job listings, position descriptions, contract history, library, and as well as the budget information should go back, for at least five or 6 years. And I don't believe that that's the case. And I think the town council, you see that their budget history goes back, probably 10 years or so you can get that information as you want it. So I think these are all things that would lead to more transparency with respect to NEs that we should have on here, and I look forward to some of these changes. And by the way, I also feel that the school committee should approve the website ultimately. Before this goes out, everyone should look at that, okay, and agree that everything is there we want, and take a vote to accept that website, because it is a representation of the school committee, down basically. And we should all have, I think, a vote into any changes or what's on the website. I know we had some problems before, supposedly, with booster clubs and this and that and everything else. So I think it needs the oversight and approval of the school committee. Thank you.
Mr. Mudge. I'm sorry, Mr. Buscardin.
Thank you, Mr. Cerisi. Ms. Page. Bill, I couldn't disagree with you more. I think if they had to come to the school committee with every change on that they wanted to make on the website would never, ever, ever be completed. There has to be some.
All it takes is a count of vote 5-4, 4-3, period. That's all.
Yeah. If we could vote every day, every time Mr. Booth decided he wanted to update it, or every time a teacher or Dr. Humbert wanted to update their website, if we could cast the vote every day, then you probably could get something done. But at 2 meetings a month with that is a living, breathing document now. The other one was a static piece of crap. That's a living, breathing document. And that has to be able to be adjusted and massaged and changed as the school year goes on.
I'm speaking of
content.
I'm
sorry, but I'm speaking now. Yeah. To have them bound by school committee edict of what's good and what's bad, when quite frankly, there's not many people sitting at this table here that have the ability to judge whether the website is sound or not. There's only a couple of people here. Excuse me, I have the microphone right now. I don't recall interjecting any time you spoke, Mr. Mudge.
I don't think it's very...
If I did, Mr. Mudge,
One speaker at a time,
Why are you
please.
criticizing
And right
your
now,
fellow school committee
Mr.
members?
Buscardin has the floor.
Okay, let me ask you. Anybody up here thinks they know more than Rich Booth about a website? Raise their hand.
I didn't say that. I
All
was
right,
not
is there any
challenging
more
Richard
discussion
Booth.
on the
Okay.
website specifically?
I
Is there any questions for Mr. Booth or Dr. Humbert?
I'd just like to finish by saying I think you did a great job. I think there's obviously you have a lot of work left to do, but I think it's going in the right direction, and I applaud you for the work you've done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Yeah, it looks very good. I had never seen some of that stuff because obviously it's teacher pages that are pretty in-depth. I did ask Dr. Auger earlier about the school committee being kind of buried in there, not on its own. I did have a concern about that. Part of me wanted to say leave it that way, but it occurred to me that it's really not an administration. We're not administration. We're a separate entity. So I don't know where it would fall.
Well, on the quick links, there is a school committee video, so you have quick access there. And I suppose
Get right to IQM2 from there, Michelle?
I don't know if that's us or not. So one click brings you there.
Turn it off and then turn it back on. Hey, I got lucky. No, I guess not.
It's a signal. It's time to end.
Wrap it up.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I know we had talked, I think it was about 6 or 7 months ago, with the webpage coordinators, and we had asked Dr. Auger to investigate whether there was some cost benefit to outsourcing some of this functionality. It makes sense to me to have content management, obviously, at the school and administration level. I'm still somewhat skeptical about actual web management diffused throughout, as opposed to having it outsourced. Have we done any work on that, Dr. Auger, yet?
I mentioned some comments to that end when we presented the 5-year plan. And, we mentioned that we are very happy, like you just mentioned, that the content piece being controlled by each school is where it needs to be. It just allows us to get things there in a timely manner, and, it's just another step closer to the principal of the school and the people who need to update the sites. In terms of something a little bit more centralized with someone with stronger skills on web design, our design right now, which we're looking to continually improve, is that there is a person in the technology office to kind of oversee that for everybody. When there's an issue, we would do that, and we can probably, with the training that we're doing with teachers on their own web pages and with the school people who are, overseeing the websites, have kind of a collective input, people helping one another. I see a lot of emails going back and forth between the web coordinators of different schools. A lot were happening this weekend, in fact, about, ways to improve different features. So, we see that as productive for now. Over the course of the next year, as part of the 5-year plan, I plan on taking a very close look at, our technology staffing overall, and that's part of it. If there's a piece of this that we feel we could do better if we were outsourcing that piece, we might do it. So it's part of an overall comprehensive look at our technology staffing, our ability to respond to problems as they come up, not just website problems, but problems with computers and buildings and hookups and just about anything that could possibly go wrong with the use of technology. So it's part of the plan for this upcoming year to look at that more closely. But for the time being, we are very happy with the people at each school and feel it's pretty cost-effective as well.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Dr. Humbert or Mr. Booth? All right, well, thank you very much. This design looks great, so we appreciate the hard work that is going into this. All right, that brings us to citizens' comments. If anyone has not signed up already on citizens' comments, if you could come to do that. All right, so we just have one person who has come to sign up. So, Mr. Robert Degnan.
Nice introduction.
They wanted to sign up also. They weren't aware of where the sign-up sheet was, so can they sign up now?
Yes, that is perfectly fine. Yeah, we don't restrict you if you didn't sign up at the appropriate time. It's not like there's, so feel free to sign up. We would ask that when you come to the mic that everyone please state your name and your address, even though it's written on there. And then we would ask that all comments be up to a 3-minute limit so that we can make sure that we get through the rest of our agenda.
Would you like for me to wait until they're done?
Okay. You're fine. You can go ahead and go.
Again, my name is Robert Degnan. I live at 265 Essex Road. I'm a resident of North Kingstown and also a teacher at Quidnesset Elementary School. I'm here today to speak with everybody about increasing classrooms at Quidnesset, and particularly looking for three classrooms at each grade level, and hopefully to have a full-time behavioral specialist at the school. I think I speak for everybody, and this, when I say this, I speak for anybody who works for the town of North Kingstown in the school department. We have the greatest job in the world, hands down. We're all educators, whether we're administration, school staff, teachers. It's just, hands down, we have the best job ever. We get to work with kids. We get to work for kids. We get to do our best with what we have. And that being said, in order for us to do our best sometimes, we need to have the best environment to do that in. At Quid right now, we have a pretty needy population, and we're servicing them at the best of our abilities. We're working very, very hard as teachers, and we want to make sure that we give the kids everything that they need to be successful. And not just for this school year, we're talking for the rest of their lives. Because I think basic education 101 is not just to make a student smarter, but to make them a lifelong learner. A learner that wants to continue their education until their very last breath when they're old and gray. So that's what we're talking about today in general. When I think about our school, and I think about the socioeconomic dynamics of our school, I absolutely love it, because in every classroom that I've had in the past 4 years, going to my 5th year now, every child has erased their socioeconomic background, and they've just become supportive of one another. And that's the greatest part of it. And I keep saying that's the greatest part, because every part of it is wonderful. They're there for one another, and we're there for them as well. But in order for us to be there for them, our class sizes are getting pretty much to the brink. In 3rd grade right now, we have 2 classrooms of 25 and 26 students in each, respectively. The way that the classrooms are set up, there's probably going to be around 10 children with personal literacy plans in each classroom, about 4 IEPs, at least 2 children who have English language learners, as far as that's in their documentation. And there's several children that need behavioral support as well. Could we do it with 2? We would work ourselves night and day, and we would do our very best to make sure that these children are achieving, because that's what we're there for, help them become lifelong learners so they can achieve. Could we do better with 3? Absolutely, hands down. Because the 4th grade that's coming up from 3rd grade right now is looking at roughly the same numbers. 13 children with PLPs in the classrooms, 6 IEPs. We need to service these children. When we ask for these requests, we're not asking them for ourselves. We're professionals. We'll do our best with 1 classroom, with 2 classrooms, with 5 classrooms. But we're there for the kids. Because the child that we fail to meet the needs of today is the adult that we might fail to meet the needs of tomorrow. And the more children that we reach now, the more adults we have that are better prepared for the future, for our future, for their future, and for their children's and grandchildren's future. So not to take up any more of your time, but please, in considering the school year coming up for 2014-15 and every school year after that, we ask that you please consider that we have 3 classrooms at each grade level at Quidnessett so that we can make the best efforts toward meeting their needs as learners for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mrs. Kirkudis.
Hi, Amanda Kirkudis, 133 Lang Drive. I'm just going to read off of a letter that I had written. So, dear Dr. Auger and School Committee, we are writing in regards to some concerns we have about next year. As of right now, Quidnessett is slated to have 2 grade 3 classrooms. We are asking for you to add another grade 3. Having just worked with this group of students, we know the population of our students, the behaviors, and the academic needs, which lead us to the conclusion that 3 grades are necessary. Currently, there are about 20 students on PLPs. That would mean that next year, almost half the class is reading below grade level. This is different than other schools that also have students on PLPs. At other schools, students may need to catch up by 1 to 2 levels, and at Quidnessett, it could be 4 or more levels. Please keep in mind that a PLP doesn't just mean that a student below grade level is below grade level in reading. It means that the teacher must test, analyze results, identify qualifying students, and create a written document. This document includes a detailed intervention to be done by the classroom teacher, how and when the intervention, as well as the next steps. In addition, each contact with parents and all diagnostic and screening assessments must be entered as well. Some of the interventions take a minimum of 5 minutes. If you have 10 students, that's about 50 minutes every day that is given to these children. And when you're working with these children, the teacher cannot work or meet with students performing at or above grade level. To help alleviate this problem, maybe another full-time reading teacher would benefit our building. In addition to the large number of academic needs, there are several students with behavior issues. These behaviors are not the typical 7 to 8-year-old behavior issues such as chattiness and silliness. These behaviors are hitting, kicking, screaming, and biting other children and adults. They're also defiant and very disrespectful. Several outbursts can last for several minutes to approximately 20 minutes and happen multiple times a day. A full-time experienced behavior specialist would help manage these types of issues in the school to ensure that rigorous instruction continues throughout the school day. This would enable all students to experience academic and social success, which are both important to a well-rounded student. Again, we are not here to complain, but in the last few years it has become very challenging to meet the needs of every student in the classroom. With your help, all students will be able to reach for excellence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Riccio, 52 Arcadia Drive. I've got 2 children at Quid, and I love the school. The teachers are all fantastic. I just feel that they need more resources to help them help every child in the classroom. If they're dealing with behavioral issues all the time, the kids who want to learn don't get to learn. I have a son going into 3rd grade, and I would greatly appreciate there being 3 classes instead of only 2. They need more help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Shelley Begelli from 179 Mesa Drive. I spoke at the last meeting, and I also thank Dr. Auger for meeting with us as a parent group a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago. It seems that way. I just want to reiterate what was said at the last, what was said at that meeting and what was said at the last school meeting. I just don't want us to lose sight of the issues that are presenting to us at Quid. I appreciate the teachers being here today. The teachers at Quid have been nothing but overachievers in terms of supporting our students. And
I'm sorry, could you step closer to the mic, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes,
Okay.
much better.
All right. So did you hear what I said to begin with, though?
Yeah, I was able to, but you were
All right.
starting to drift off there even more, so I
All
wanted
right.
to get you a little
Okay, so the things that I just really want to pay attention to when we start looking at resources for Quid and you're looking at allocations of resources across the district, I want to be clear, it's not, for me personally as a parent, I'm excited about the diversity at Quid. I think that that's real world, and this is what our children need to understand and experience. That's not the issue. I actually am of the position that we're risking the basic educational rights of all students who are entering that school. Just because we have the level of need that we have, when you have 50% of a class on a PLP and those students may be 2 grade levels behind, you're risking providing those students with the right support, and the other students who are at or above grade level aren't being provided with the enrichment that they need. So I would just ask the school committee, when you're looking at allocations of resources, is really drive down the data here. The data might look the same as it does for the other schools, but if you really start digging through it and you look at, if you were to look at that classroom of PLPs and say, okay, well, what grade level are these students really at? Let's pay attention to that, because that ratio, when you look at capacity and 25 should be enough, that's different than it is for other schools if those students are 2 grade levels behind as opposed to 6 months behind. The other piece that I really think needs to be, and Dr. Auger, we talked about this when we met. He mentioned, it was brought to my attention that 50 new students started at Quid this year. Now, I don't want to say numbers that aren't accurate. That's what was told to me. I know the percentages probably didn't look that way, but I think it's because it's a transient population. It's not 50 all came at once and stayed. It's you had 5 come in, 5 leave. I'm just wondering who's monitoring when Quid's at capacity, and when you have these new students coming in, how are we assessing and monitoring what their level of need really is? I feel like that's where we're missing the support and the resources. I don't know how we could have that kind of population increase in one school without an increase of support. So I would advocate for, certainly my daughter's going into 3rd grade next year. I'm very nervous about her walking into a classroom of 26 students with the IEPs and the PLPs that exist. And certainly the need for a full-time behavior specialist and a full-time school psychologist to support the population that exists at Quid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Young, 110 Crestfield Lane, North Kingstown. I think, I stand on behalf of these educators and the phenomenal job that they're doing at Knesset Elementary School. I think one of our major concerns that we have today is these ratios of PLPs, IEPs. We have these children that are in there that are not getting the attention, the advanced placement classes that are available to them. It's more the teachers, putting all their attention towards these behavioral issues, towards these, lack of educational issues. I think what we need to do as a school committee is to really look at Knesset Elementary School and say, we do have a ratio disparity here. We have to make this equal across all of our districts. If you look at the ratios across the Stony Lanes to the Quinessets, they're not equal. All we're asking for the school committee to do is look at this as a whole, as a district, we're all taxpayers, make equality across our schools. That's really the goal of this. We want all of our children, regardless of where they are in the tiering of education, to get an equal opportunity coming out of this school. So when evaluating and looking at these hard numbers speak for themselves, right? I mean, when you look at them, some of the districts, the northern district versus the southern district, there's more population, there's heavily populated areas. Depending on where these children are coming from, it might require migrating some kids to other schools, but I think what we need to do, we can't funnel all of these children with behavioral issues or PLPs or IEPs into one school because they're not getting that enrichment that they're looking for. The enrichment needs to be distributed across all these schools where these phenomenal educators are. They're exhausted. I mean, my child who just went through kindergarten came out, had a phenomenal time, unbelievable learning experience, but the reality was he came home every day with a child that had behavioral issues in the class. The teacher had to spend an hour with them. You hear these stories, and these are true life stories. We deal with this in our real life process no matter what, wherever you are in the world, but the reality is the ratios aren't equal across all districts, and that's what we need to achieve. And that's what we're asking for you to reevaluate, reassess. We're really looking for something to happen by September. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that have come to these meetings and nothing's happened over the years, but we've gone to Dr. Azer's office, we've raised this concern. We're really looking for something to happen, because if it doesn't, Knesset School is really going downhill. I mean, people are starting to look to go to private schooling, and people are saying, you know what, your child's not getting the enrichment that they deserve there, where they could if they moved over to Stony Lane. Stony Lane's the better school. It's the premium school. It shouldn't be. They should be equally distributed, and it should be a great environment. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other citizens' comments, then we are moving on to Superintendent's report.
I guess I'd just like to use a moment of my superintendent's report to thank those of you who came to the mic tonight. Since meeting with the parent group and hearing from the Knesset parents that came at our last meeting, I've done a little legwork that I will share with you through our contacts. And, I do have, some perspective on this that I think is important to add. In terms of the capacity at each school, the point about grade 3 and I believe it's going to be grade 5 having 2 classes. In those cases, there may be more consistent with the rest of the district, but overall, and this is by design, the student-to-teacher ratio at Knesset is significantly lower than in the rest of the district. It's roughly about 19 and a half kids in a classroom, where Stony Lane would be the highest in this regard at 22.6. In terms of the capacity of the building, Knesset is again the lowest at 82% capacity of the building being used, where Stony Lane is the highest in the district, and Forest Park is there as well at 96 and 94% capacity. In terms of the teaching assistants that we have per student, the ratio is almost double at Knesset than it would be at Stony Lane. In terms of the psychologist, social worker, behavioral assistants, that kind of support, the high end of that, or the low, the high end of support is at Knesset, the lowest is at Stony Lane. And that is because the highest number of free and reduced lunch students are at Knesset. It's a title school. Some of that support comes from title. Some of that support comes from the district. With that said, I'm not saying that we're in the perfect situation. I think clearly the experiences that you've mentioned tonight indicate that we have some work to do and some things to address. So I just want to start with real numbers, and I will look at any of the numbers that are thrown out there. I think it's easy to kind of run with this in all kinds of directions. There is an effort being made and has been made over the years to increase the support to schools like Knesset and also Fishing Cove that have a higher free and reduced lunch population. And I think there is some payoff in that. Even with the classifications tonight, the classifications are what they are, and They, as Dr. Humbert mentioned, they measure a lot of different things. What really puzzles me, and I'm on a committee of superintendents discussing the future of these classifications with RIDE for this reason, that in North Kingstown, every school improved this year, every one. And, but you wouldn't necessarily know that looking at the classification scores. In one case, in this case, if you take Stony Lane as an example, they went from commended to leading in their scores, but their scores actually went up last year. So did Quidnessets. So did every school, including Davisville. In some cases, with Davisville, you know, we were worried about a particular area, a gap in how the scores grew between special education and regular education. If one of those areas doesn't come out to the minimum expectation for growth, even if your scores are some of the highest in the state, and this did happen in some districts where schools that have students scoring higher in most cases than most schools in the state, they still come out with a warning. To me, that just doesn't feel right, but there are lots of different pieces to consider. So it's really important to really dig into this data and to see what it's telling us. Again, I'm committed to doing all that I can to keep my eye on this issue and to channel the resources to the northern end of town, particularly at Quidnesset, when I have opportunities. The budget process is a lengthy one. There are lots of good arguments for and against the additional staff at all schools, and we have to respect that and work through that process. But I do promise that I'm going to continue to keep my eye on this, and if I can find some measures that I can help to address some of these issues, even by the fall, I will try to do them. It's not a guarantee. It's a lot of work to do. It's not something that I can certainly talk about, say, a transfer of significant amounts of staff or, you know, even a redistricting plan by the next school committee meeting. There's just no way that I could make that happen, even if I wanted it with all my heart. That takes a lot of work and a lot of study and a lot of discussions that are open to the whole community before things like that happen. And some members of the committee have been here through years where those kinds of things happen, and they're not fun for the community. So, you know, I just want that to be known. I want to give Dr. Humbert a little bit of time during my superintendent's comments because we have two teachers, I believe one of them is even in the audience tonight, who have some very significant professional development experiences that she wants to point out.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Before we move on to a different topic, I'd just like to make one quick comment regarding the Quidnesset Elementary School. I think, and we've talked a lot about this, as Dr. Roger has said, we've talked a lot about this during the budget process in the past. You know, we look at our district as a whole, we look at our school populations, they're ever evolving, ever changing, and we try to allocate the resources to each school that school needs, that staff needs, that population needs. And that's the goal and the objective. I can tell you that what I've seen, I feel as though that Quid is not the only elementary school that could definitely use additional resources. You know, there are other elementary schools in the district, Forest Park for one, that I also believe needs additional resources for the staff challenges there, for the population challenges there. And I am totally in support of looking at specifically what the staff needs, what the population needs there, and what resources we may already have in the budget that we can allocate or reallocate to those schools. Before we go looking at adding additional resources, I like to see, are we evenly appropriating our resources before we look to add additional resources. So that's one thing I would challenge the superintendent and the administration with, is to look at that first before we talk about adding resources. So I would be in support of that, and I would be in support in adding where we may need to add, or reallocate where we may need to reallocate. I certainly believe in fairness across the district, and that's something that people who have been on this committee for a long time have fought long and hard for many years, as far as making sure that our schools are fair and equitable across the district. And I think we can always improve on that, and that's something that we're always going to have to continue to work on as population changes and shifts and so on and so forth. One thing I do want to be perfectly honest with you and upfront about is when you start down the road of talking about redrawing boundary lines or redistricting or busing kids to other schools, you know, that's something that the school administration and the school committee attorney can speak more towards. That's you know, we can't redraw lines or move children based on IEPs and PLPs and so on and so forth. The way to approach it is allocate resources to those areas that need the resources, not move any children. I would prefer to approach it as identifying where we need these resources, what resources are needed. You know, diversity is a great thing. Some of my best life lessons learned were from being in highly diversified schools and summer camps myself as a child. So that's just wanted to be upfront about that. And I apologize for taking up the administration's time and the committee's time. I just wanted to make sure that we're all working together and on the right path for this. Thank you.
Can I make a comment, please?
In a moment. Yes, since I've given Mr. Cerisi a couple of minutes here just to address this issue, I told the superintendent I was going to let other committee members make a few short comments. So why don't we can just go down the line if anyone would like to say anything. As I have spoken to a few of the or at least one of the Quinnesset parents, I have said that while I wouldn't be very much in support of redistricting because of that takes a long time to figure out, it would be this thing if I would be supportive of what supports need to be added to our students there. So, that in mind, Mr. Buscarden, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to, just like to, you know, nothing new or groundbreaking, but I mean, we understand the situation that you see every day. We don't, well, I can't speak for everybody. I don't experience it like you do, but we're certainly aware of it. I would agree with what Mr. Cerisi says. I think the first step is to make sure the resources that we have at hand and currently budgeted, that we're using them in the most efficient way possible. So that means move some things around to get the type of support we need at Quinnesset, then that's what we'll have to do. But to well outside the budget right now is a very difficult thing to do. However, there are things within the budget that we can look at to make sure that we're doing as much as we can with the resources that we have available. So I just think you folks should know that that's going to be our goal, to make sure that it always is, to make sure that we're spending our dollars the most efficiently, but in this particular instance where it's directly affecting children's education, that we're going to be even more intense in our approach, scrutinizing where things are and where things should be.
Mrs. Avanzato?
Just briefly. Appreciate your comments coming here and letting the committee know, kind of where things stand from your perspective. And I thoroughly agree with the previous comments of Mr. Cerisi and Mr. Buscarden about the approach. And the best start was to meet with Dr. O'Shea, and you've done that. So hopefully that starts the process. And then on our end, we'll start looking at the various options as well in terms of what was outlined earlier, the budgetary. And moving kids and busing kids based on those things, I believe, is probably even discriminatory and not a road I think we want to go down, but the resource allocation is very important, and that's where the focus needs to be. So thank you.
Mrs. Clerkin, did you have anything you want to add?
I also want to thank all of you for bringing this to our attention. It's a very important topic, and while I also oppose redistricting for a variety of reasons, I think the number one thing should be, and I echo the sentiments of everyone else, is looking at how we can maybe reallocate some of the resources to get you guys the help that you need over there.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I'm not going to reiterate the same points that have been made. I will comment that I was hoping, and I hope that one of the actions by the state legislature to relook at charter school funding, that we, to the extent we can, that our administration and our North Kingstown representatives play a part in that, because I think in the southern end, we have charter schools that draw inherently too many resources from the district to serve a incredibly homogeneous and the least diversified populations in the state. And I think that's partially a fault of the way charter school funding was developed. So I hope that our committee, our administration, our representatives can help play a part in addressing and fixing some of that, so either more resources stay within our district to allocate to those, or those charter schools start serving populations that charter schools were meant to serve.
Mr. Mudge?
Thank you. A couple comments here, just to follow up on Mr. Jones's comments. You know, we were at one time looking at putting together a request and sending it up to the State House again and getting some relief from that. However, in our packet here today, I noticed that we have one school district, one socket, and I would hope that our school committee would also do this, has petitioned, I guess, the state to not be required to send their kids to charter school. And they have a much more difficult situation. The population's, much more, difficult, as well as the economic, socioeconomic conditions. But I find that strikingly interesting because it's something we've been talking about for some time. And the reason they're doing that is for the very, things that we've talked about, whereas we're spending close to $900,000 a year to send maybe 70 kids or 60 kids to charter schools. And, we could bringing those kids back, for nickels and dimes, basically, if they're, they're scattered out, and, have $400,000 or $500,000 left over to address these problems. So we've got to take some follow-up action. I know we were going to do that several months ago. It hasn't happened, but we need to follow through with that. So that's one potential resource. Also, I have looked at the state funding formula for all the districts. Now, that's based on socioeconomic and property values, and it's a little bit complicated. But nonetheless, as a starting point, the Department of Ed allocates, and this isn't for all costs, it's basically for educational costs. They allocate about, let's say, $9,000, roughly $8,800 per student towards the formula per child. But they also allocate like 40% of that, is something like $4,000, $3,500, something like that, $4,000, for each child that is eligible for free and reduced lunches. So the reason I'm bringing that up, that's a metric. And we've talked about this before, where probably 55, 56% of the kids that are going to Quinnesset, should be getting that extra aid. It should be directed, because the state has already gone through the metrics again and said, gee, the kids that need the help, and whether it's right or wrong, I can't judge, but they've used that as a metric to help the other kids from a socioeconomic standpoint and whatever. So that's a good, it's a start. And, I'll run some numbers, because maybe we should be focusing on that ourselves and saying, well, we may have more kids over here that are in this category, therefore a percentage more should be going, to that school. And I'll run some numbers, and I'll be glad to send it to you and the administration, because that is something that we have control over. Well, thank you.
Dr. J, thank you for letting us indulge in this
Ask
time.
Dr. Humbert to talk about the two professional development opportunities.
I would like to recognize Stephen Skaggs. He was here earlier. I'm not sure if he's still here. He's a fifth grade teacher at Stony Lane, and he was selected from a competitive pool of 4,000 applicants to be part of what they're calling a dream team of 200 talented math and English language arts teachers. And they're going to continue their work in a digital professional learning community. This is all sponsored and endorsed by LearnZillion. And then I would also like to recognize Sandra Mikowski Lindstrom. She was selected for the Teachers for Global Classrooms program from over 400 teachers, and she is receiving an opportunity to travel to Japan this month for 3 weeks. Last year she went to Korea, and she has a possibility of going to South Africa next year.
All right, well, thank you very much. Obviously, we have some grant writers in our midst. I was able to go to attend the DMS drumming session that Mrs. Mikowski's classes did, so it was very, very exciting. Okay, so that brings us to our routine items and executive session. Do I have a motion to seal the minutes from June 24th, 2014?
So moved.
Second?
Now, I'm sorry I just asked for that because do we need to wait since we are going back into executive session?
Yes, you are going back into executive session?
I think so.
Then you would need to wait. Unless you want. Did you recess executive session or?
No, we actually, we ended the executive session. So yes, then we're ready for the motion. That's what I wanted to ask their attorney on. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
I abstain.
Thank you. 2 abstentions. Do we have any votes that we need to disclose?
Yeah, 1 vote. All members were present at tonight's executive session except Bill Mudge and Bob Jones. Motion by John Biscardin to deny 2 grievances, seconded by Cheryl Clarkin, and the vote was the motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. That brings us into our consent agenda. I am looking for items that people would like to exempt from the consent agenda. Mr. Cerisi.
B as in Bravo.
Okay.
Mr. Cerisi, what was that one again?
B as in Bravo.
Anything else? Mr. Mudge?
B2?
We've exempted all of B.
Excuse me, C2, I beg your pardon. C2, E8, and E11. And I do have a question concerning some of the other items. I don't see any new business heading on the agenda.
There was no new business.
Right. Is there anything else to be exempted? Mr. Jones?
D, Delta.
Mr. Cerisi?
I'm sorry, E10, Echo 10.
I'd like to offer a motion for the rest of the consent agenda.
So do I have a second to approve the remainder of the consent agenda?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, that brings us to the first item, B. Mr. Cerisi.
I just needed to abstain from the vote on that, so I would offer a motion to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain? Is there any nays? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to D2. Mr. Mudge.
C2.
I'm sorry, you're correct. C2, do I have a motion to approve C2?
Second?
Okay, Mr. Mudge, you had a question.
Yes. Could I get a little more background on this? At $31,000, it says for East Bay Educational Collaborative Science Kit.
These are our science kits that we use from K through 8th grade, and they are the inquiry kits that are part of our GEMSNet program.
The thing that I'm concerned about, it says it's East Bay Educational. Is that our kids, and how many kids do we have participating in the East Bay Collaborative?
No, the East Bay Collaborative is the company that does the refurbishing. That's all of our students participate from K through grade 8.
Okay, so as opposed to the Southern Rhode Island Collaborative, this is the East Bay Collaborative. I understand that. Thank you.
So there's a motion and a second on the table. If there's no other questions or comments, all those who approve of C2 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, that brings us down to D1. Do I have a motion to approve D1?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Jones, you wanted to talk about D1.
Yeah, I just had a question. I don't have any specific issues with the flexibility factors. I was just hoping that if there's anything that came out of the legislative session regarding teacher evaluations that either A, impacts that, or B, we could maybe get some brief summary of any impacts that may have come out of the legislation session about teacher evaluations.
Right. First of all, I recommend an approval of this tonight, but I do think that depending on what happens further with the legislature, with the approval or veto of what has been approved by the legislature, that we may have to make a few changes, because the last page of the flexibility factors is based on annual evaluations of teachers in a differentiated model, and the recommendation from the legislature or the approval has been of a cyclical model, so that piece would have to be changed. The rest of the language, I think we can, with the deadlines and professional growth goals, the student learning objectives, et cetera, all of that language will still work for us, but we will have to look at that cyclical versus differentiated model. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Mudge, you had a question?
Yes. What's the time frame for that? In other words, to make that change, is it something that we have to decide before school starts? What's the timing of that? That we've got to make sure that this MOU is updated.
Well, I think right now, this understanding is the way we've been operating this past year. So the sooner the better that you could make it official.
Well, again, I think the legislative action has been finalized regarding this issue, right, or these issues?
But the governor has not signed it yet.
Okay, so the governor will probably sign it in the next couple of days. Given that, then how quickly are we going to come back and modify, or how urgent is it to come back and modify this in a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year?
I think we can revisit this. Mr. Ramos is here. She and I worked on this together. I think we could revisit this in August and have something before you, before the start of school.
Good, because I think you should ensure that we do, before we get into that school year, and then there are any other changes. And is there any additional work that would be prevented or saved this summer if that was changed tomorrow, this provision was changed tomorrow?
No, this applies to the evaluation model, and we're not evaluating until school resumes.
Right, there's no training or anything else that's going to be affected by this, or?
Well, not by our language. The way we wrote the language, it actually works for both a cyclical model and a differentiated model.
Good, thank you.
Mrs. Obradoro?
Is there a motion on the table? I'm sorry.
Yes, there is. There's a
Okay, I
motion
wasn't
and a
aware.
second. Mhm. Okay. Is there any other comments?
Yeah, just one. Is this going to be put on a unfinished business list? Could we list that as the unfinished business for the next meeting, so we keep track of this as a?
Well, only if we have something that we need to update it on. If we're not ready for it.
Well, we know we need to update it. We know we need to update it, and we ought to just, put it on our action item list that, we're going to do it.
But we can discuss that. All right. All those in favor of D1, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, that brings us down to E8. Do I have a motion for E8?
So moved.
Second. All right. Mr. Cerisi?
Just quick comment. I just, Ms. Ramos is here with us this evening, so I just wanted to congratulate her and wish her well on this endeavor as the technology instructional coach for the district. I know she was a great grade 2 teacher over at Forest Park and has done a lot of work around the district, and it will definitely be tough shoes to fill for grade 2 at Forest Park, but I just wanted to wish her well on this.
Is there any other comments or questions? Mr. Mudge?
Is this just a one-year position?
It's a grant-funded position that is grant-funded right now for 1 year.
And I might have missed this, so if I did, I apologize. What was the position description for this? Is this a new position description?
Well, I wrote a new job description for this.
Did we approve the job description?
It was attached to the last school committee meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Did you, so, again, I might have missed that. So that was approved just recently?
That's correct.
And that was obviously, that position was advertised throughout the whole school district?
Right, that was a posting, an internal posting for the entire teaching staff.
Could I ask why it was just the internal posting?
Isn't that according to our contract?
Well,
That's
I
our
know.
usual procedure, is to start with the internal candidates first. And then if we weren't satisfied with the quality of the candidates, then we would move to external.
Frankly, I know the appointee, and this has nothing to do with her qualifications or anything else, but, we're starting this position at, about $80,000 and so forth and so on, plus benefits, so you're talking $110,000. And, I noticed you said in there that the finances, we may save money, okay, hiring the first step teacher, so forth and so on. But, that kind of concerns me also is are we really going to save money? And this is a one-year appointment.
The term of the Title II is 1 year. It's an annual grant.
Did I miss this too? Wasn't this both grant and general fund funding? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it says right on the agenda reporting form, Bill.
Yeah, was it?
Funded through Title II and general funds.
Yeah, what was the, and again, I guess I didn't, I thought I noticed, what was the split on the funding or not, by the way? I didn't see that.
Well, we wrote the grant for a step 4.
So we got?
Which is generally what people do when they write under Title II. And then if we have a candidate that's higher than that step, then we go to general funds. And then when we replace the person that's been hired, it's usually at a lower step, so that gives us, what's the term, net?
Breakage.
Breakage.
You either break even or you save a little, right?
If you have someone that comes into a position at the high step, that position that's being vacated will likely be replaced with an outside person that's a lower step. That's when we hire outside people. So there's your gap right there between this higher position and the new position.
Mr. Buskard, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just, it's similar to a question Mr. Mudge had. And you partially answered it, except the question for me was the percentage split between Title II and general funds, and you answered it by in the form of a step. What is a step 4? What's a salary for step 4?
It was in the range of 40,000.
Okay, so we pretty much split it's a split between Title II and general funds, 50-50, just about. Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me.
I'll come back to you, Mr.
Right.
Mrs. Avendato. Did you have your hand up?
I did. Just was going to. I believe that when we talked about this position, we discussed it being internal, and that would be a person who's thoroughly familiar with what we're doing in technology. And I think we talked about it being an internal position, or at least being offered internally first, as I remember.
Well, we really wanted somebody who was involved not only with technology skills, but also somebody who was involved with the initiatives we've been working, because this is technology integration is the purpose of this position. So you have to have somebody not just that has technology skills, but somebody who knows what's happening in the classrooms. So we felt that this candidate had a good handle on that and was also skilled at being able to conduct professional development at many of the levels.
Right, Mr. Mudge?
Yeah, well, here's another issue here, concern, is that this is split funded, so the government's going to pay $40,000 of this grant, and that would be actually more because the government grant would be picking up benefits and those things, which is good. But with that said, if the grant goes away next year, what happens?
Well, the grant doesn't go away. We basically, in Title II, we average about $160,000 annually. It's just what we prioritize through that grant. And one of the things was a priority of our 5-year plan was to have somebody who could support people in the use of technology. And so we weren't able to afford it through the general funds. So I sacrificed some things, some professional development opportunities in Title II and wrote for this position.
Then could you show my ignorance, I guess. Title II is?
Title II is part of the CRP, our Consolidated Resource Program, and that includes Title I, Title II, Title III, IDEA-B, and IDEA Preschool.
Jesus keeps going. Have we seen the CRP for fiscal year 15?
That was submitted to RIDE.
Did the school committee approve the CRP?
Great, so we're a little
Excuse
bit
me,
off
I've
topic
asked,
now.
no, we're
we're
not.
off topic
Did
on
the
this.
school committee
No, this
see?
is off topic. So we're
It is
coming
not
back.
off topic.
Yes,
You've got
it is.
a couple $1 million
All right.
budget. It
No.
gets submitted, and
And
we
we're
don't.
not talking
We don't
about
get to approve the budget.
E8, the
We
approval
don't-
of appointments.
We don't get to
technology.
approve the budget.
So that's what we're sticking to.
You know something?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So, I have a motion on the table, and I have a second. If there's no further discussion about appointment of this, I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, that brings us down to E10. Mr. Cerisi, first, do we have a motion for E10? Okay. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Who made the motion?
We don't have a motion.
Oh, okay, good.
every year we, again, this is another agenda item that we continually approve every year, and we continually talk about how we're going to look to possibly administer this differently every year. And every year it just keeps reappearing on our agenda in the same fashion, and we keep approving it every year. The positions are budgeted for. However, we have to, and it's like a broken record, but it never gets done. We have to do a better job of prioritizing things. Just tonight, we're talking about possible additional resources for Quinnesset Elementary School if we don't have resources already available. We're going to talk about full-day K, all these great things, but yet there's no additional money, and we don't want to do anything differently, and we don't want to change our priorities, and we don't want to sacrifice things. We want to just keep bringing up these great ideas, but saying we don't have the money for it. Well, we do have the money. We're just not prioritizing it appropriately, in my opinion. We've talked about these curricular coordinator positions. We've talked about the web coordinator positions. All these little odds and ends nuggets that hang out there. This is almost $37,000. Again, not saying that there's something wrong with this, not saying it's a bad thing, just saying, can we look to administer this differently? Can we save a few dollars here and maybe apply those dollars to some of the resources that they're looking for out at some of these schools, or Bud's full-day K, or whatever other priorities may supersede what we're doing with this money. We had 6 curriculum coordinators assigned to an administrator in the district who didn't know that those 6 curricular coordinators were assigned to her until almost 3/4 of the way through the school year.
Who was that?
I kind of would ask, well, what were those 6 curricular coordinators doing for 3/4 of the school year? No fault of theirs.
Is that this year, Mrs. Cerisi, or last year?
Cerisi has the
So I'm not going to name names.
No, I'm not asking names, just whether it was this year.
That's not what I'm here for. I'm just saying we need to be, I'm not saying somebody's doing something malicious or wrong, I'm just saying we need to do a better job of prioritizing our resources. This is a resource. We need to start deciding where the priorities are, where the needs are.
Judge Rouget.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. I with all due respect, Mr. Cerisi, I don't recall any conversations about queuing this up to look for a review of curriculum coordinators. And I was the person who organized this as assistant superintendent 5 years ago. In that time, in the last 5 years, North Kingstown has been credited by the Department of Education as being one of the school districts that's made significant gains in English, in reading, writing, and math at all grade levels, one of 6 in the state. And I would see this as this move, the use of curriculum coordinators, as a big help in that. We made before I was here, Dr. Thornton started a move on common assessment, getting people together to be consistent about the standards they have at each grade level, sharing best practices with one another. That strategy has paid off. That strategy pays off for low-income schools and high-income schools. All of our schools have gained this past year, and they have in other years in the last 5 years since we've been doing this. So, I don't see this as a side thing or as kind of a luxury item that we could probably live without. It would be a very difficult thing to live without. I agree with you that, we need to take some hard look at, how we channel resources, and we do that year after year. And as I mentioned in my comments, I have some rock-solid proof that we do channel a lot of extra resources to Quinnesset that other schools don't get. But this I consider a vital piece of the puzzle, and it's one that has been paying off. And, could we do it better in some cases? I'm sure we can, and that's true for every place in the district and every employee. But overall, I think it's been a very effective program, and it's been paying off for us.
I think you're missing the point, Dr. Roger. As I said there in my comments, nobody's saying this is a bad thing, this isn't a good thing. That's not my point. My point is to stimulate thought, to stimulate conversation, and stimulate prioritizing our resources. If your recommendation or the assistant superintendent's recommendation is that this is high on the priority list and this is something that I would recommend we would continue, that's fine. All I'm simply saying is when we have needs in the district, we can't continually add to the budget. We need to look at what's already within our budget and prioritize those resources. And if it comes to a point where we need additional things, then that's fine. Then we go look for those additional things. Again, we kind of get into this mode of just continuing on the same path year after year, and all I'm simply saying is that we take a fresh look at these things and see if there's something we can do differently. If there's not, then fine. Nobody's saying that this is a bad idea or get rid of this or we don't need this. I'm just throwing some thought out there, that's all.
So I guess one of the questions is that, Dr. Humbert, is this something that the curriculum areas, is this something that you see as a higher priority on your list of things that you want to have?
The curriculum coordinators, and by the way, this is a 2-year cycle for these, and so I interviewed each person that's on here, and they have moved the work. Some of them are recurring, but they have moved the curriculum work during common planning time and the district professional development days considerably. They submit notes to me, they submit an agenda, they attend professional development committee meetings. So I feel that they're being held accountable, and I feel that their work is significant at this point.
One of the things I guess I would add is that we haven't spoken about is we're coming up on the park test next year, and while it is no longer, as of this past legislature, the state assembly has said that it isn't going to be the standardized test for graduation, although I don't know if the governor has signed it yet. We will want to make sure that our curriculum is matched to the park curriculum. Okay. Well, do you have? Would you like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I have a question.
Motion to approve it. We have a second. So now further discussion. Mr. Buskard and then Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I just have a question about the numbers. It says 18. And 18 times 2,040 is 35,720, right? But when I look at the spreadsheet, there's only 17 people on there.
Someone's double listed.
We didn't fill the science position.
Oh.
So 1, 2.
I thought one person was.
But the spreadsheet would reflect that, I would think. The spreadsheet.
It's supposed to be 17.
Okay. But when you look at the line item number 10, it says for a total of 18 at 36,720, and 18 times 2,040 is in fact 36,720. So if it's only 17, it should be $2,040 less. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. I think one person does two different.
But on the spreadsheet, it doesn't reflect that, Bob.
Yeah, she said
It has science, it just doesn't have a name next to it.
I thought Mrs. Lozinski does two.
I think we left the placeholder there in case somebody in the fall decides that, if we repost, decides that they will take it.
Yeah, no, sorry, John. I thought it just meant she did.
So it's a pending approval, and then we just have to approve that person for that stipend once we found them. That's fine.
I'd move to approve the 17 that are listed and come back for the one.
So I'll withdraw my motion, and that'll, Mr. Buscardin's motion can be the main motion on the table.
Okay. Mrs. Avanzadi,
I'll withdraw my
still
second.
second? Yeah, okay. All right, Mr. Jones, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I did want to reiterate and follow on the discussion here to say, I know in the, and I spoke briefly with Dr. Auger about this, the NEAS report commented about our curriculum coordination. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Auger. I think the focus was on some vertical integration on that. And I guess I would just sort of reiterate what Mr. Streese saying, if this is an area of importance and we're moving with Common Core and some other stuff, that maybe this is an area we get some follow-up on in terms of a little more detail on what's being done and how we're addressing those. I know you mentioned that Dr. Kenworthy, in his overall thing in a year or 2 years from now, we'll come back with addressing the findings, but maybe the scenario we can get a little more detail on as the year progresses in terms of what's going on in terms of that. And I had a question for Dr. Humbert just in terms of sort of the depth in terms of this. Is this more on assessment stuff, or that there's some commonality between schools in terms of the curriculum? I mean, or is it sort of a hodgepodge of different things?
The work of the curriculum coordinators or the NEASC?
The curriculum coordinators.
Well, it does take a different lens depending on the area that they're working in, but most of it is curriculum alignment to the Common Core. Even in science and social studies, the teachers are aligning their work to the Common Core. So I would say it's basically on instruction, curriculum, and assessment. It's the triangle. You really can't separate one from the other.
How much especially at the high school, is it their function or department chairs or someone else's function in terms of, and maybe this is a little more advanced, but in terms of sort of interdisciplinary curriculum coordination? And I mean, for example, I was just struck that in English, at least 10th grade English, they were reading, a certain set of 1840-ish American authors, and their history text had a whole chapter that talked about, that movement and that kind of stuff. And it seemed to me that if they were kind of slightly aligned, they'd be talking about it both in different contexts, but at the same time. So
the shift in the Common Core is for nonfiction. So you have a lot of primary documents from social studies that are used to get at the citing evidence pieces of writings.
Yeah, and I didn't mean specifically, but it's sort of the larger point of saying, is that a little more advanced in terms of where in different disciplines we have overlap that they're able to coordinate, or is that going on here? Or
well, you see a tremendous amount of integration at the middle school level because they're working in interdisciplinary teams.
Right.
So you have a lot of crossing between amongst the disciplines, all four of them actually. But there are natural connections with social studies and ELA, and then ELA and writing is crossing all of them. So you are seeing a lot of integration, and with the Common Core we have a real focus and depth that's occurring, and it is really starting to naturally integrate all of the content areas. So it's kind of a nice morphing that has resulted from the Common Core.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the table in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Could you clarify the motion again? It was 17?
Yeah, it's
Okay, that's
the
right.
curriculum coordinator stipend for a total of 17 coordinators for $34,316.
Good.
Are you an aye or a nay, Mr.
Yes.
Lynch? Okay,
Please
thank you.
document that.
All right, so that brings us to item E11. Do I have a motion and a second for E11? This is the daily rates for substitutes.
Can I just go back? I think the number on the last one is 34,680.
I think the motion was specifically for 17 coordinators.
Yes, 17 times 2,040 is
34,680, yeah.
Yeah.
I did my math wrong.
But the motion was specifically for 17 coordinators. It wasn't necessarily for the price.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just making that clarification so everybody knows what the motion was.
The motion to approve this one here.
Right. So we have a motion to approve E11. Do I have a second? And second. Okay. Mr. Mudge, you wanted to speak about E11.
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
There's already a motion on the table.
I'd like to amend the motion, okay, to delay this for till the next meeting. And the reason I'm suggesting that is that there is no information in here on, and I'm not saying I don't support this either, but what this is going to cost from a budget standpoint, apparently it isn't budgeted, it wouldn't be here, but what is the impact on the budget? And until we have that, I would recommend we hold off and find out what this is going to cost us.
We have a subline in our budget, and if you can tell me how many people are going to call in sick and be out on medical leave next year, then I'll be glad to put that in there.
Well, you've got.
But right now, as it stands, we have a budget, a subline that we usually base on prior years as best we can. This was brought forward to you with some changes because this year we had an incredibly difficult time getting subs for all categories. And certainly, if there's some other information you'd like to have, we can certainly put this off. But if you're looking for an exact amount of what we're going to pay subs next year, there is absolutely no way that can be provided. I don't know how many medical leaves we're going to have. I don't know how many people are going to call out sick. You just don't know.
Well, why don't you take an average or something?
That's what we do, and that's what's in the budget.
Yeah, thank you. Use the current information you have. You got, bus drivers, you got bus assistants, you're changing their rates. You've got teachers, clinical day program, you got da-da-da-da-da.
But the part that you don't understand is that right now, if we don't have a sub, if we can't get a sub for a teacher, you need to pay another teacher $56 an hour to cover that school.
I guess what I'm saying is there must be some metrics and give us an idea on what this is going to cost us from a budget standpoint.
It's going to cost you what's in your budget, and it might cost you more because, again, the subline is a moving target, and we review it every quarter. I cannot give you a number. I can tell you that we've had a difficult time getting subs. We've had to pay some extra money for subs. That's all I can tell you.
So I think what you're saying is that this could potentially save us money rather than spending us more money.
It could. I really can't say, except that, we are a school system. We have education to provide. And, I can't guarantee that this is going to help us with the subs, but I can tell you that Dr. Ajay can tell you, many of the principals had a heck of a time. I know I had problems in transportation all the way across the board.
If I can just interject, with the use of the internet for a lot of these assignments, it is just that much easier for substitute teachers to compare rates instantaneously. If they're interested in subbing in a particular week, they can look at the board of many different districts and see offhand, where can I get a few dollars an hour more.
They can actually do that right away. I've been told that ASOP that we all use has something called the job checker or the job seeker, something like that, so that if you sign up for the service, you are receiving the email that tells you the 5 openings or the 3 openings in the areas that you've provided, and you can right away choose which one is the highest rate. So that's a new feature in ASOP. That has not really helped us at all either. We don't believe.
It's our feeling, Mr. Mudge, that this will save us money and will provide us with the coverage that we need. If after doing this for a while, we look at it and see that it's not, we're going to try something else. But there's no guarantee one way or another because there's too many moving parts that we don't necessarily have control over. How many people get sick on a particular day, how many people are out, and who is applying for those jobs. That's not necessarily within our control. We're trying to put some incentives in place to make the conditions better and ultimately to save us some money.
Well, is it fair to say?
Mrs. Avanzato has a question.
I was just going to point out that we ran into this, and we may still have the same problem with tutors. And if we don't,
we absolutely do.
And if we're not competitive with the other districts, you can't get a tutor for your child.
I think it was last year, Mrs. Avanzano, we did change that rate, and yes, we also got approval to use outsource if we had to. I remember that, because you're right. It really was an issue.
Literally cannot or could not get tutors, and I know the substitute issue is a problem too.
So I don't think you guys have reviewed this in a very, very long time.
I believe that we discussed this in a meeting or in executive session, maybe. I don't know where it was, but you had mentioned, Mary, that we are looking at getting hit, for quite a large amount of money because we had to use teachers in that sub-role at a higher rate. So I don't think waiting another meeting is going to change that fact.
Mr. Mudge?
Well, is it fair to say that, all things being equal with respect to last year, that this would increase our substitute budget by 10%?
I have no idea.
Well, if you look at teachers, that you recommended a $10, increase, that's 10% plus.
Well, if you take a look here
Okay.
and you need to get a teacher sub, and you can get one, and they're $80 a day, $90 a day, or $125 a day, compared to if you can't get one and you need to pay a teacher $56 an hour times 5, I think that's a difference in dollars.
How much did that happen last year? All I'm saying is that I would expect to go to the line item and see a 10% increase in substitutes just based on the numbers here. Is that unreasonable to say?
Yes.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mrs. King has been clear. She's saying that there is a possibility that it might run over what we're budgeted for substitute teachers. The reality is that we're not competitive with surrounding districts all throughout the state with what we pay substitutes. And we're having a hard time getting substitutes, and we need substitutes. So in order to remain competitive and be able to get substitutes, there's a recommendation to increase the substitute pay to be in line with the averages around the state. With the chance of that we may run over what's budgeted for it. And what will happen at that time, Mrs. King will come back to the committee and say, we're over budget on this line item. We may need to transfer some funds from somewhere else in the budget or from surplus. She doesn't know that right now. That's what she's saying. But what she does know, and what the superintendent do know, we need to be more competitive to bring substitutes in the district. I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, so it's basically 10% more based on these numbers
So
that we should
call
be
it,
paying.
call it 50% more, because we really don't know. We don't know. It's a budget.
Sure it is. I understand.
It's an estimate. A budget is an estimate.
But
It's an
that means
estimate.
it's 50% of
The
something.
definition of budget is not exact. It's an estimate.
If the substitutes are $400,000, and
We have
and
a
this
motion
could
on the
represent
table.
$40,000.
We have a motion on the
40,000.
table and a second.
I understand.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right, that brings us to the end of the consent agenda here. And that brings us to unfinished business, to the CIP,
Go back to
the fishing code boiler replacement.
You have in your packet information regarding our recommendation to award the replacement of the Fishing Cove boiler. We really did have quite a few issues this past winter. As I'd communicated before, that boiler is way at the end of its life. We've worked this through the facilities subcommittee, our architect, engineers, and whatnot, and our recommendation is to award this to the low bidder, which is Delta Mechanical.
Do I have a motion to approve Dell Mechanical?
So moved.
Second. All right, discussion. Mr. Mudge and then Mr. Cerisi.
I'm really looking at the process of this thing going out to rebid. What were the first bids on this contract that went out, that we received?
Doesn't matter, they're not what's being presented.
It does matter to me significantly.
They're not
Okay.
what's being presented to you tonight. What's
Well-
being presented to you tonight are the final bids that came in.
I didn't ask that question. I said, what was the original bids?
Right.
And are they the
Don't have an
original
answer
bidders?
for you.
Okay?
Okay,
And,
Mr. Mudge, you've just received your answer. She
excuse me?
doesn't have an answer.
She doesn't
So-
have it. Well,
Right.
here's a question I have then. Here's a question. With respect to these bids, okay, why in fact did we go back out to bid? And did we have a legal opinion that we could go back out to bid? You said at the last meeting, when I asked, because nobody showed up at the pre-bid meeting.
No, it's not what I
okay?
said. It's not what I said at all. That's what you said.
No, that's what you said. You go back and listen to it.
All right, all
No.
right, so
Okay.
rather than
The
getting
first
into
time
an
this
argument-
went out to bid,
Yep.
the bids came back and there were discrepancies in the bids between all of the bidders. There was information that was not properly presented or properly communicated, and it was a decision with the facilities subcommittee, with the architect, with the director of DPW for the town, with input from legal counsel from the town, that yes, we could go back out to bid. Remember that we reserve the right to do what is in the best interest of the North Kingstown School Department. We did not feel that the bids that were received were valid bids all the way across the board, and we were concerned about the numbers. It went back out to bid. The second time, there was a mandatory pre-bid conference, and only one bidder showed up. Again, it is not in the best interest of the North Kingstown School Department to have one bid. We then had another bid conference that was not a mandatory pre-bid. From that came the 3 proposals that are in front of you, of which we are recommending that the award be given to Delta Mechanical as the low bidder on the proposal.
But we didn't follow the provisions of the contract.
We certainly did.
I'm going to ask Mr. Biscardin, who is on the Facilities Committee, if there's anything he would like to add as to this process.
Mary described it pretty succinctly. The issue at hand was that there was confusion on the information that was given to the proposed bidders, and consequently, they came back with numbers all over the board. I mean, some discrepancies were, $60,000, $70,000 difference. I mean, it wasn't even close, and that's kind of a red flag. If you go out to bid a project and you get things they're that large of a discrepancy, something's not right. So, in an effort to make sure everybody was working on the same page, we did what Mary, the subcommittee decided to do what Mary described, or what Ms. King described.
John, didn't they?
What she described was to make sure that we were doing what's right for the town and for the school department. That is what we did.
Regardless?
We did nothing wrong. We did nothing illegal. We did nothing conspiratorial, Mr. Mudge.
Yeah.
We did everything that we could do to make sure we were spending tax dollars the most efficient way possible, and to get these boilers done in as expediently as possible. This time of the year, it doesn't matter to me. Go onto the Google.
I know.
Google a contractor and see if he can come tomorrow to do your work.
Yeah.
These people are putting out bids for business in February. We were fortunate that we were able to gather this information to get these boilers done this summer. We were overjoyed to see that we got the response that we did. This is not an easy thing to do. This is not come and fix my storm door. This is put boilers in a building. This takes time, and anybody that's worth their salt is booked solid until December right now. So we were very fortunate that this error was caught, the mistake was caught, and it went back out to bid, and we got the confusion, the information that was being misinterpreted, corrected, and now we have solid bids that were all within a range, and Delta won. Delta's the lowest bidder. They have all their paperwork in order. They're licensed in Rhode Island. They have the proper insurance. They have good, sound references. They're doing prevailing wage. They're doing everything they need to do to satisfy the way our bids are written now, which are pretty tough to follow. So, there's nothing wrong with what we did.
Well, except we didn't follow the town charter and the bidding policies.
Okay, the town attorney told us we were fine.
That's right. The town, excuse me, you're absolutely right. The town attorney addressed this, please.
Yes,
Did we get this in writing?
Okay.
Did we get this in writing?
Alzado, did you have a question?
Madam, you know something? You're a lawyer, and you should know contract law. We did not follow our own contract.
You know, Mr. Mudge, we got an opinion from the town attorney.
I want to see it in writing. The town attorney must put opinions in writing.
Every whim.
Okay, number one. Number two.
Fine.
No, I'm not done on this.
I've already called you off, and it's Mrs.
You've already
Alzado's turn to talk.
Before one last thing I'd like to remind everybody. When we talked about this 2 weeks ago, I personally invited you to this meeting where this was discussed and decided upon, and you chose not to show up.
I had another appointment, okay?
So that's immaterial to me. You chose something over this which means this was not important to you as your other appointment.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I think the fact that you had the opportunity to ask all these questions to the experts who made this decision, your questions now are moot. All right?
John, were you part of the discussion?
All right, we're getting
Excuse
a
me.
little bit off point
This could be
here.
fraud. Were you part of the discussion? Oh, yeah, John, were you part of the discussion when they were trying to hold up Kem Plumbing,
We're off
because
point.
they wanted him to do more work, okay?
There
Because
is
they had a
motion
problem?
on the table.
Give us, Phil.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor and a second. Mrs. Avanzato, did you have any questions about the motion on the floor? Mr. Mudge, that's enough. Okay. All right. That's enough. All right. All right, gentlemen. Mrs. Avanzato, did you have a question that you want to be brought?
I don't believe there's anything at all wrong with what happened. As a matter of fact, I would like to acknowledge and congratulate Mrs. King for not allowing this bid to go out the way it originally was. It was a problem.
Only for the two bidders, not the three other bidders. 3, 4, and 5 didn't have a problem.
no point.
Now, you
Let's
just heard
take a vote.
Mr. Piscardin say,
I'm cutting this off.
Yeah,
All right.
I did say that. I used that word. Look it up.
All right, folks. We have 3 bids before us. 3 bids that match the specifications that we need. And we have a motion on the floor and a second. All right, are we ready to vote?
No, I've been ready.
Okay. All those in favor of A1 with the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion
no,
carries.
we didn't follow our town
Okay.
Mr. Mudge, I'm going to tell you right now that you are Mr. Big Laws, and you know all about laws, and I'm going to direct you to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act that talks about employee harassment.
Yeah.
Because I am sick and tired of being harassed by you, and you are violating that law.
Please
so why
put
don't
that
you
in
look
writing,
it up? Oh, I
because
will put it in
you
writing
have
because I've had enough
You have
of your
that-
harassment.
Well, why
you are
didn't-
nothing but a miserable, horrible person trying to make yourself look like you know.
I'm taking back the meeting. Okay, folks. All right. All right, folks.
It's never over.
All right, folks. We're now coming to A2.
And how about the harassment stops?
All right.
Because you're going to hear from my lawyer on it. No, it's a fact
All right.
that you're a harasser.
All right, that's enough here, folks. Okay, we are at A2, an unfinished business, the high school HVAC.
Approve what?
A2.
Second.
What are we approving?
We have a motion
Look
on
at
the
your
floor,
agenda.
and the
What's
second.
the money? How much we approve it? 1.2 million, 1.7 million?
You don't need to approve anything. Dr. Auger and I were at the town council meeting last night. You approved something 2 weeks ago about moving this forward. The town council approved $75,000 for us to put attic fans at the high school so that we can relieve some of the extreme heat on the 3rd floor. This is an update for you. This information was also sent out when Dr. Auger sent the memo to the town council for their meeting last night.
Who's paying for that? The town council, or is it coming out of our budget?
The town council, from the $400,000 they earmarked at budget time.
So the town council is putting up their money. It's not the 400,000 that we had set aside for this.
No.
Mrs. Avanzato.
Yeah. Who's in charge of the project?
That would be our architect, our facility supervisor. We'll work in conjunction with Phil Bergeron from the town. So
Okay.
it'll, and, you know, the facility subcommittee will be
Another
up to
question.
date on it as well.
Do we have to, this is an update, it's on our agenda for approval. Are they going to dribble this money out over 400,000 so that we have to approve each amount?
Well, the issue that
Process?
we have is that the entire project is 1.7 million. So the next steps that are going to be taken is that our architect is going to put out to bid in packages those items that you see in your matrix and whatnot, so that we can come back and try to figure out what it is we are going to do and how we're going to get to the end of the project. Now, the rest of the $400,000 for the town council, any of that we're going to use, yes, we will be going back to them with the project information.
I don't understand that.
Well,
I don't think there's a reason for that. And I also object to Mr. McKay's statements at a recent town council meeting, and it was more than one occasion, where he made comments about this committee and that they couldn't trust this committee to spend $400,000 properly, and so they had to dribble it out to us and have oversight. I take offense at that. I really do, especially in light of their audit report.
All right.
I understand that. I would take offense to that as well.
Perfect comment. That is perfectly fine, Kim. That's within the motion. That's within, it's perfectly legal and appropriate.
Let me add that to that,
Directing
please.
the committee that we have a motion on the floor and a second. This money has already been approved by the town council.
No,
So
I'm
this is
discussing
kind
the
of a
process
formality.
of us approving each and every little bit of money that, were we not earmarked or given $400,000 from this town council or not? I would like a legal opinion from our council
No, we
on
haven't,
that.
Linda. We have not been given $400,000.
It's sort of similar to when we have bond money. So the bonds might be approved.
Disagree.
But that also needs to go to the town
Mary Ann,
council.
could I please have you to weigh in on this? I don't approve of the council holding the funds the way they are.
Mrs. Avazano, if you remember last year when we got the bond,
That's bond money. This is different. Bond money is voted on by the town and has specific legal restraints on it, does it not?
Yes, but let Mrs. Carroll answer.
let me just go back, because when we got the bond money last year, if you remember, this committee had a problem with the fact that the town was going to actually be having the final say on the awarding of all the bids. I checked, the town solicitor and I had a conference. The town charter in North Kingstown allowed them to have the final say, even though it was repairs to buildings, and normally the school committee would have that.
Why? Because it was bond money?
Yeah, but it's also charter, that even
All
though
the
there
time
are-
or bond money?
Right, but if there are buildings, we're supposed to, but your charter kind of gives the authority to the town, and we work, if you remember, we work together to do it. In other words, we would approve and then they would approve.
It's never been done that
So
way.
the town charter
Never.
No, Linda,
Is
could I
this
have
bond money or is this not bond money?
No.
Then I don't understand that point.
taxpayers' money? And the fact of the matter is, okay, it's coming out of either their fund or our fund. If this money were to come out of our funds, we don't need to go to the town council for anything. We don't need it. If, Linda, they appropriate $400,000, which they haven't, you see, $400,000 to us.
They had.
Okay? No, they have not appropriated $400,000 to us. Had they appropriated that money to us, we don't have to go back to them for anything.
What are they doing?
And they don't have, so they have, the answer to your question is, they have not appropriated $400,000 to us.
Mary Ann, is that true?
As much as it pains me to say this, yes, Mr. Mudge is correct. They earmarked $400,000.
So they intend to be in charge of this project and dribble the money down to the school? I thought that they appropriated $400,000.
No, no.
But let's look at this as we have the opportunity to move forward in getting rid of the hot air that's in the third floor on our high school. So that is the primary goal here.
Right.
So Mr. Busgarden and then Mr. Jones.
Who's in charge of the bidding? That's the other question.
We are.
Mr. Busgarden, you have the floor.
Sure?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, regardless of who's holding the purse strings, having these fans installed in the third floor is a huge first step towards alleviating that third floor problem once and for all. This is not the only thing that's going to be done, and it's not going to be done anytime completed anytime soon. There's a lot of work that needs to be done up in that attic area and the third floor itself, as well as with the mechanicals that control the entire building. But this is a huge first step, and there was a point not too long ago that we didn't think we were going to get anything done, Mrs. King. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
We were sitting in a subcommittee meeting, and I said, you mean there is nothing we can get done this year for that third floor? And everybody sat there shaking their heads. But we poked and we prodded, and they came up with this plan. So I'm very happy and proud that we were able to, it may sound like a little thing to some people, But this is a huge first step in that $1.7 million to get that high school right and get that third floor right. Improve the environment, the learning environment for the kids, the teachers, everything involved. This has had to be done first, and I'm glad we were able to do it this summer.
And, it really is important. Now, one thing to be very clear, it's not going to be cool in that building, but right now, just pure logic, you have the third floor, the first and the second floor heat rises, you have the attic that is not ventilated, and it's a metal roof. So you've got the third floor wedged in between a lot of heat that's moving. So it's sort of like there are a lot of homes that have the attic fans. It comes on at a certain time, or it just pushes the hot air out. So it will provide relief. It's not going to be 60 degrees in there, when it's 90 degrees outside, but just getting that hot air out where right now it's trapped and really kind of getting forced back down again is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not hot air, it's superheated air. It's 180, 190 degree air that if you were to go up in there, you couldn't breathe. So this is a huge step in keeping and controlling that third floor environment.
Mr. Jones and then Mr. Cerisi.
Just a question and a comment. My question is this, what are we actually approving if we've given information to the town council and they're holding the purse string? It seems to me we're just, just shaking our heads saying, yeah, I agree with John's point. It's great we're moving forward, but maybe someone can address what we're actually approving. And my comment is I'm only concerned that we run into a situation like in North Smithfield where there's, the town council earmarks or holds something, and then, there's confusion, and I know Ben worked on this, but there was confusion between what the town council believed and what the school committee believed, and then, the town council, for whatever reason, can deduct it, not change their mind, do something, and so I'm only worried that if this is the way we want to do business, that's fine, but, maybe we should have more discussion and coordination with the town council. Or two, I do believe it's also in our charter where we can just turn over management of the buildings to them. And they can just start running it, as a town asset, which it is.
Mr. Cerisi.
I think the reality of it, the coordination, collaboration, communication, those are all great buzzwords. I use them all the time. But we had Mr. McKay sit on our budget subcommittee for I don't know how many months and still voted no on the school department's budget when it came in front of the town council. So I don't want to get off topic on the agenda. It's late, but just to legal counsel, I think maybe a discussion for another time. But it sounds like the town charter is in conflict with Title 16, RIGL. If care, custody, and control falls under the school department and the school committee in Title 16, and the town charter is conflicting with that, well, state law supersedes the town charter. I'm not suggesting that we have that argument or we fight that fight. I'm just suggesting that it may be something we want to have a conversation on at another time or look into, and it's certainly not this committee's duty to, revise the charter or whatnot, but I do think there may be some conflict there that maybe we want to address at another time. Thank you.
All right, I think everyone has spoken once.
I didn't finish?
No, I'm not ready to vote. I need to speak again. Sorry.
I know everyone's spoken once. Do you want to give people an opportunity to speak again?
There's nothing to vote on.
We do have a motion on the
You don't?
table. I mean,
There's nothing to vote on, and this was an FYI. We weren't really even sure we were going to get to this point for this meeting. We didn't think we were going to be able to get in front of the town council until July 14th, but luckily we were able to get this on last night so that we can move this forward very quickly. We are going to rush the equipment here, but you voted last week, 2 weeks ago, for us to move forward based on a facilities subcommittee recommendation, based on we didn't think we were going to really have time to get back to you. So this is getting back to you as an FYI. It was also emailed to you last week when Dr. Auger and I put this forward to the town council. So you have technically already voted on this, just not on the actual specifics of it.
Oh, we need to appropriate money for it. Now, it's either going to be the towns or school departments.
Mr. Mudge.
I spoke to Mr. Embry, and Mr. Embry indicated that the money, and actually I believe it's in the vote, if you want to look at the vote that was put forward at the town council meeting last night, that this money, now that it was approved, will now be transferred to our CIP fund. So that's, and I'm going to pay the bills from our fund because we need to keep capital anyway. So this is coming directly from the town.
Well, to sum this all up, as a separate, whether we pay the money out of our
Point of
fund at this
order.
time or the town,
Right,
let's approve it to
Meeting
go
back under order,
forward.
please.
Let's just approve it to go forward.
Apparently, there's nothing to approve, from what I'm being told. I am certainly not going to stand in the way of the HVAC at the high school. We've been trying to get it for 10 years, longer than most of the people on this board have been on this board. I will just say, though, and Mary, I give you a lot of credit for everything that you're doing and working with the town. I have no problem with working cooperatively with the town. I need clarity on this process. This is not making any sense to me whatsoever. That would mean that no CIP project that we undertake on these schools, none of them is under the control of the school committee. That can't be.
That's correct, though, Linda.
That cannot be.
No, the law puts you in control. That's clear. The issue is, even though you're in control, does the town have any say in any of the contracts that were awarded?
Okay, that's what I want to get to.
last year?
So
You're right, Mrs. Avanzano. You're absolutely right, but are you going to turn down, I mean, this is like a gift. Are you going to turn it down?
I have a question. Are we controlling the bidding, or are they? That's my question.
No, we are working, it's going to be a joint effort again. So now that we have the approval, what Dr. Auger and I asked for was that we didn't do a formal bid because of timing, but we are going to go out and seek 3 or 4 different quotes. We're going to go to the MPA where we can. That's going to be controlled by the director DPW, the architect, myself, and my facilities supervisor, and the facilities subcommittee. So it's still a joint effort that we're working together. But there isn't going to be a need to go back to anybody else again to award to a contractor. We're going to go out and find the lowest of the 3 or 4 quotes, and we're going to get moving on the work.
Because basically the town then is awarding the bids, not us, if we're not going to be voting on each one.
The town has nothing to do with it, Linda. I talked to the town. They had nothing to do with the project. Now, the issue is, Linda, I think I can help. Okay? The issue is, we're only in control of the money that they appropriate to us. Okay? Until they appropriate any money,
I guess my complaint is to the town council then. They ought to appropriate the money to the school committee when they intend to give it to us for the CIP, instead of trying to retain the control.
So you're saying the whole $400,000 they should appropriate?
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second to basically move ahead with this issue.
Time out, please.
Has already been approved. So if that would be the vote that people would like to take, we can take that sort of vote.
Are we voting to bypass the town's procedures?
No.
The bidding procedures?
We're just saying everything has been approved and we're moving ahead.
No. Are we voting to bypass the town charter and the bid proposal procedures?
Quite frankly, you can vote anything you want because the town council already voted it last night, and we have the money coming to us.
But you're asking for permission to.
Modifying the motion.
Mrs. Avanzano's motion was to approve, but there's nothing really to approve.
Okay.
For a waiver, to not to go out to bid.
So I do have a motion on the floor and a second just to approve the moving ahead. Does the committee?
What the hell does that mean?
Lauren, could you read the motion, please?
The motion was to approve this item, but nothing to approve.
There's nothing to approve.
So just remove the motion in a second. It's an information, it should be more information from Mrs. King.
This is not going to fly for me. But
you're right.
I mean, they can move ahead with this project, but we need to talk about this way of proceeding in the future. This is unacceptable to me.
But we're not following the bid procedures of the town.
We still have the motion on the floor and the second.
I remove my motion.
Thank you.
Who seconded it? Whoever seconded it needs to remove the
So
second.
who's given the superintendent the authority to spend this money?
Cheryl,
I removed my second.
Thank you. Okay. I don't think I can speak with our attorney and we can talk about how we will move forward in the future. But for right now, I don't think there's anything more that we can do today rather than beat this issue to death. So why don't we just wait until we have this, we have a discussion with our attorney and the town?
Are we being asked as part of this motion to?
No motion anymore.
Remove the bill. No motion.
Okay.
There's no
But have we
motion.
been asked then to not follow the bid procedures to
Chair is
award
going to
this?
talk to the attorney and to the town and get back to the committee.
Because I'm under the impression that we're asking to waiver the town charter in soliciting for bids for this.
No, not a bit.
We're not?
We are getting quotes. It is considered an emergency, so we can move forward quickly. We are getting several quotes. We will be reviewing those quotes, making sure we have the lowest qualified person to do it instead of putting it in the paper, taking 2 weeks to review it, blah, blah, blah. That was approved last night, and we are the town council is well within their right to do that.
No, it's not great.
All right, so I'm moving on to unfinished business B. So this has been a contentious issue that we've talked about in the past. Before we even go on, I guess my first question is there 4 people who want to move on with this issue? Because otherwise, there's no sense in spending a whole bunch of time on this.
Well, here's what I'd like to suggest. I know there's some concerns about policy and having a policy written to be more specific and controlling the length and the amount and of times that these leave of absence requests are made, and I don't disagree with that. So what I'd like to suggest is that we extend the current LOA until August, when we reconvene and we can get a policy put in place that's acceptable to everybody, and then bring it up to that.
It does take 2 reads of any policy.
I understand.
So I'm just saying, I want the committee to know that it's not like we're going to come back here in the first meeting in August and that I could even have a policy that would be prepared for the committee. You know, you'd still have to go through a first read in the first August meeting, a second read in the second August meeting before you'd even have any sort of a policy.
Right.
And that would be, we don't meet until August
If they extend
14th.
through to that point, then that's fine.
You can't do that unless you reconsider the vote. Remember, you've already voted on this. So the first thing, even to get to what you want to do, Mr. Biscarden, there has somebody who was in the affirmative, who denied the request at the 2 meetings ago, has to make a motion to reconsider. Then that vote has to be reconsidered, and then you can do what you want to do. But you first have to get it reconsidered.
Define reconsider.
But Marianne, I am asking the committee if there are even 4 votes to get there, and that's what, and that's what Mr.
In other words,
Biscarden was
you
talking about.
voted on a motion.
Right, I understand all that, but
Right.
what's it, I mean, when you say
So in
reconsider,
other
what's
words,
the
if you,
technical
if
term?
you were, I don't remember whether you were in the affirmative or not. I don't know how you voted.
I approved it by denying it, so I can
So
reconsider.
you denied the leave of absence.
Yes,
Okay,
I know.
So
So
now
I can-
you can make a motion
Right.
to reconsider the vote.
Okay, now, I know
Now,
what
what that
reconsider means in
all right,
English
now,
language.
all right, what
What's it
that
mean in
means is,
lawyer language?
if your motion passes by 4-3 or more, then then it comes back on the table, and then you can make the motion that you just said, saying we'll just extend it until August. But you first got to get it back on the table. This is not back on the table right now. So you have to vote to get it back on the table. So anyone who voted to deny the leave of absence needs to make a motion, then it needs to be seconded, and then see if the majority of the school committee wants to put it back. I think that's what you're asking, Kim. Are there 4 votes to reconsider, to bring it back to the table? If there are not, then the motion stands the way it was voted 2 meetings ago.
Madam Counsel, one other question, please, on that, for
Yes,
clarity.
Mr. Munch.
When we discussed the first vote, is it only restricted to the people that voted? In other words, if somebody was out in left field, they didn't show up, they weren't at the meeting and everything else, they're not part of this thing,
Point of
right?
order.
I'm just trying to get the,
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Cerisi, what's your point of
I'm
order?
not trying to, Mr. Mudge, I apologize for interrupting you. I just want to say that what legal counsel and what the committee chair just explained is spot on. Before we even get into any additional discussion, there has to be a motion and a second to reconsider, and that motion has to pass. If that motion doesn't pass, then there's no discussion.
My question is, who's eligible to vote?
Everybody, because.
Even the people that weren't there?
Yes, everybody's eligible to vote on a motion to reconsider, but the motion can only be made and seconded by people who voted, who were in the winning side. So in other words, Mr. Biscardi,
Yes,
you're saying, I want to change my vote, so I want this to come back and reconsider.
Yes, I've done it before, yes, I
So
understand the
you need to
process.
make a motion, somebody else who voted on the winning side.
Somebody else
needs
got to
to-
second it.
Right.
Right.
So I want to make a motion, I'm making a motion to reconsider, for B, the reconsideration of the administrator's leave of absence request. Can I get a second? Guess not.
No, I wanted to approve it, so I can't vote a second.
You can vote a second, Mrs.
Second.
No.
She said I couldn't.
You gotta people, first, a motion and a second has to be made by people who voted that were on the winning side. So the people that voted
I
no,
was the only
two
person
of
who
those
was on
people.
the losing side.
No, I was on
That's
the
why
losing
I'm-
side.
Oh, you were, then no, you can't make the second. Okay, I didn't realize you were on the losing side. All right.
Motion
There's-
fails.
There's no motion to reconsider. All right.
Well, can we double check to make sure that I wasn't on the, do you have, can you,
Yep, I will look.
just as a, because I know I wanted to approve it, but. I think we decided to table it at the time, or, I don't know, this is so controversial, it's crazy.
Can we get out the minutes of the meeting from the last
That's what
meeting?
she's looking at.
It was
I will
2
second
meetings
it if I
ago, it's
can.
not the minutes you haven't, it was 2 meetings ago.
27th, I believe.
I don't even know if I read it right, Larry.
That's the case.
So much discussion.
The Chairman made a good point. Are there 4 votes to reconsider, whether you can second it or not? That, if there are,
Not for me.
I don't know about them. Instead of wasting time, you're right, instead of wasting
Yeah,
time.
let's find out.
All right.
That would be, got my vote.
All right, so Mrs. Clarkin, you would reconsider. Mr.
course I would.
Biscardi, you made the motion, you would reconsider. That's 2. Ms. Page, you voted in the affirmative anyway, that's
Right.
3. Is there one more person to reconsider?
All right, so I'm not hearing any, so I don't believe there is. So what that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Time out, we got correspondence.
No, that's in your reports. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.
I think correspondence is on the agenda.